before we start, I need to get something off my chest.
Oh boy.
Okay. You've been dumping me lately. Okay. You did a couple of episodes without me.
Oh
So
no.
just let me say this. I've ran into a number of people that have said, Rabbi, without you, it's not the same.
Oh.
I don't want to use the B word, boring, but
Wow.
someone said it without you, Rabbi. So
one person said it.
So this is what I want. I want a raise.
Oh, of course.
I want a raise.
0 to what?
Of 0 to whatever.
To 0.
To whatever. I want a big raise. I mean, that's what people do in Hollywood.
Yes.
When they know that their services are very much needed. What they do is they go in. I'm actually hiring a consultant.
Oh.
Jay.
Oh.
I'm hiring Jay to be my business consultant because I want more money off this podcast.
Oh my God.
If you don't meet my needs, if you don't meet my demands, okay.
You're not going to.
No, I'm not going to talk during this. I'm just be here.
Oh.
And have a pretty face, but I'm not going to give any opinions. I'll only talk in monosyllabic words. Yes.
I don't know if that negotiation tactic is going to work with your daughter because I think
yeah. I'm so upset. I feel so upset and sad right now.
Okay, so you're not going to come. I see
God.
I see the way it's going. I'm not going to get the raise.
I know. It's like when there's a band and they do a good job all together. It's true. When the three of us are together, that's the best. But sometimes we have other bands that we play with. So it's nothing personal. It's just, we would like to interview people. And I get that it's not for everyone, that it's not everyone's taste, which is fine. But you're not exactly the type that's going to have patience to ask the question and then listen for long answers.
No, long
I
answers,
don't think so.
Not so much, but interesting. Why? I would have loved to come to here to tell you the. But he was long-winded.
That would not have been.
You would not have been jumped through the screen and strangled him, with all due respect to Sal Litvak, who we loved and had a great time. And the episode is amazing and hilarious. But I know you, and I've known you for 44 years. You would not have survived. I'll tell you what. In person, you would be better. I think you would do a really good job interviewing people face to face. But I think this kind of communication is not. You're so good at what you do. You're the best at answering
let's get going.
The questions.
Start shooting. Shoot away. Shoot away, baby.
Well,
okay.
So,
okay. All right, I got it. You don't want me for the interview. Okay.
But that was a good way to close it, though. I mean, that was like expertly done. With you're the best. You're the best.
You are the best.
Thank you.
We all know.
Oh, you mean her? Oh.
Both of you.
Okay.
But now we should talk about Chayleah's very difficult day today, because when we first got on the call, she talked about how she was struggling with setting up the microphone, and how she worked so hard at getting the microphone set up.
Wow. It is hard.
I think that was her number one struggle of the day.
Yeah, for sure.
But number two very closely followed, which was a protest on campus. So
yeah, we had
Can you tell us about it?
So in a nutshell, very quickly, this was a protest against us, actually. This was directly against our Hillel group, because we hosted some Israeli soldiers last night for an event where we had Israeli soldiers come speak to the students about what's going on and the war and blah, blah, blah. And so at first it was supposed to be I'll tell it quickly, but at first it was supposed to be on campus, but our social media post with the advertisement for the event went insane, and we were bombarded by anti-Semitism and threats, and we're going to find you, and you better come prepared for a fight. Really disgusting language. How many babies have you killed? All this kind of stuff. So we decided not to do it on campus. So we moved the event off campus, but they kept insisting that it was happening on campus. And so today's protest was against International Zionist Club on campus, who is bringing baby murderers and genociders to campus. And so they were protesting Cal State Long Beach allowing that to happen. And so it was very exciting.
No, you know what? better to be the hammer than the nail. That's what I say.
Oh my God.
We've been the nail for so long. Better to be the hammer. I mean, you know what? So how many times have we been under the boot?
I know.
Like, with someone's boot stepping on our head.
That's
okay.
True.
It's finally, payback is a bitch.
Right.
You know what? Baby killers. Baby killers. Listen, I'm being facetious. Obviously.
I know.
I'm being facetious, but in a way, I'm not.
Right.
Because for thousands of years, it's been exactly the opposite, and no one's protested for us.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been killed, we've been slaughtered, we've been humiliated, we've been oppressed, we've been gassed.
I know.
And no one has said a word.
Right.
About us. So now, I mean, I'm not proud that we have a strong Israeli army that is doing this. I am proud of the Israeli army. I'm not proud that they have to go in and kill quote unquote innocent people, but I'd rather them doing that than having Hamas come in and fly with their gliders, and slaughtering innocent men, women, and children.
Right.
We just don't fight back. We just don't fight back, fair. Because we fight with our hands tied behind our backs because we're nice people.
Yeah.
So they come out with baby killers and we come out with Shabbat Shalom. Hey, Shabbat Shalom. Hey, come eat some chon today and have some chicken soup now. And that's so that's the reality. I mean, they could call you baby killers and they call us genociders and they call us colonizers, and we invite them for Shabbat meal and we'll sit there and then moan and groan. But in the meantime, we have to do what we have to do. And I'm sorry that you have to go through this.
Yeah.
And it's terrible for your students. But you know what? But you have to, in my opinion, instill in the students a sense of pride. Right. And when you have pride, you know what? No one's going to tell you, well, so what? You're baby killers, baby killers, and all of that stuff. I know who I am. I know my place here on earth. I'm only here for 4 years. I'll be out of here with a degree, and I'll never have to look at these disgusting pig vomits ever again. And these useful idiots that join the pig vomits with them. So that's
I mean, I'll tell you the truth. Like when you see it happening in front of you, like it's upsetting, it's disgusting. They're with flags. And what I tried to explain to the administrators who came to support us, I said, you have to understand that for a Jewish person right now who's paying attention and who cares, who loves Israel, who's a Zionist, seeing the keffiyehs wrapping around the faces and seeing the Palestinian flags, it's not that much different than seeing swastikas today. Yeah. And so when
cowards, they're also cowards.
Right, they are cowards. Most of them were masked. Most of them,
of course, they're masked.
Right. So it's just that's what I think they don't understand. A lot of people, that it's just really upsetting. But you're absolutely right, and I'll be honest. Sorry, Jay, I'm just going to keep going on about it until you stop me. But yesterday I was at a conference with a lot of university administrators from across the country and Jewish leaders on campus, and was about anti-Semitism. And I felt so allergic to the idea that we were in this room begging the non-Jews in the room to believe us that there's anti-Semitism and to care about anti-Semitism. And I had my body was like so tense from wanting to stand up and scream, like, you know what? You don't believe it's fine. And just like march out and like not care. But instead we put on these conferences where we bring in all these speakers who, have different levels of whatever, like degrees and expertise. And some are Jewish, some are not. And we literally sit there and beg the non-Jewish people in the room to care. And I don't know. It's crazy.
What's the goal?
Well, the goal is that they should care enough to go back to their campuses and, at least like try to follow the procedures of like punishing students and faculty for breaking rules, or put into place policy that could protect Jewish students. I mean, there are some tangible goals, but overall, like if you're at a point 18 months into this and you don't think there's a problem.
At this point, if they're not doing it, the only thing that's going to get them to change is they're going to have to get the Columbia treatment. And that's
right.
That's
but that's what they're nervous about now. That's why they show up, by the way. Why do you think they show up at this conference?
Good.
Because they're all nervous now.
Good. I mean, at this point, any university that isn't correcting for that already, they just need to have the threat of all their federal funding being pulled.
Yeah.
And Jewish funding.
Yeah. Well,
And Jewish funding.
But
I mean, we should advocate we should find out who the donors to these universities are and go after them and embarrass them if they don't stop funding these universities. That's it.
Yeah.
Can I tell you one thing that happened yesterday?
Of course.
I was at a round table. It was maybe like 20 people. It was mostly like provosts from different universities and then some Hillel directors and some other admins. And we were talking about, the topic was about faculty and the problem of faculty on campus. So everybody was saying, very politically correct, nice things, whatever. So I just had no more patience. I also was like not feeling well. So when I'm not feeling well, I have no filter. So I raised my hand and I was like, I'm just going to say this. I said, on my campus, there are 7 or 8 faculty members who are a cancer on our campus. They are causing all the problems. They get the students riled up. They bother the administration. They hurt the Jewish community. If they would just get rid of these faculty members, like the whole thing would go away.
The whole thing.
And people were nodding all around the table. Every campus is the same thing, right?
Yep.
So I said, I have to tell you that since October 7th, like, I don't believe in tenure anymore. When you say that in a room full of academics and so there was kind of like a whoa. And then this one guy who I really admire, he's an African-American guy from Tufts, who I don't know if he's the provost or assistant provost. He went on a long rant after me and he was like, she's absolutely right. This is killing us. And if we don't do something about, these problems, it's going to be forced upon us by the federal government. Yep. And he's like, we have to fix our problems. Then a Jewish provost says, I can't believe I'm sitting at a table with someone who said that faculty are a cancer. And he calls me out, right? And he's like, how dare you speak like this? And, whatever.
Why?
So, because, what do you mean?
I understand why
So I responded. He made a whole speech. When he was done, I said, when you have a malignant tumor in your body and you don't cut it out, you die. Mm-hmm. So that's what's happening. And I'll use that word again. The whole time I was giving him my response, he would not look at me. He wouldn't look at me. And I'm like, you're such a loser. Yeah, sorry, I know I'm ranting, but he's a loser.
But what's interesting is there was an article in, I think it was the Wall Street Journal today, about what's going on at Columbia. And one of the really interesting things is that the professors in the sciences who are not involved in this, they're disproportionately going to be the ones that lose funding. Like this funding is not going to humanities, right? This is going to the scientists. And so like Columbia is facing a revolt from those people who are responsible for most of the funding to saying like, these idiots are going to cost us all of our research money. And Columbia is not going to be able to, they're not going to be able to withstand that, because if those scientists leave and take all that money with them, like that's an existential crisis for Columbia.
And I wish they would close.
And I'm sure it's the same with other universities. So they're going to have to do something.
If we would fight the way they fight, we'd have a picture of these 7 professors plastered all over campus.
Right.
Exactly what you said.
Right.
These are a malignant tumor.
Right.
And every day we would put something else around saying we would haunt them. We would get on social media against them. We would haunt their children. We would haunt them. We would.
You're right.
But we're nice people.
We're not like that.
We're nice people.
Mm-hmm.
So, you say it in a room, but they're still on campus.
I don't, we've never really talked about this on the podcast, and I don't know if you feel comfortable if I go down this road, but today there was an article in the New York Times, actually, I don't know if you saw, about Hillel, which is the organization that I work for, and sort of the divide between the students that are coming to Hillel, how, there are some who are very Zionist and some who are anti-Zionist, and Hillel trying to be everything for everyone.
Right.
But have we ever talked about the divide within the Jewish community right now that's really difficult and hurting families, intergenerational relationships? In a lot of Jewish families, there are parents and grandparents who are dealing with kids coming home from college, Jewish kids coming home from college, and saying, Israel is committing genocide and Israel doesn't have a right to exist. I mean, how would you tell a parent to respond to that?
Who are you asking? Oh, you're asking me?
The rabbi.
How would I tell?
How would you respond to a parent who has that?
We come from a different from a different angle. I mean,
yeah,
to me, Israel is not a complicated matter.
right,
It's a
right,
very simple matter. We stand with Israel. Israel stands with us. We American Jewish community needs Israel. Israel needs the American Jewish community.
right,
We know that our destinies intertwined one with another. Anyone that comes in and says that Israel has no now, which would preface it by saying Israel is a democracy. You may not like Bibi Netanyahu, and you may not like the way he, he led this campaign and this war. That's totally legitimate. I find
right,
that totally legitimate.
right,
You don't like Bibi? Look, in Israel itself, the cabinet is divided. I
right,
mean, not everybody agrees with everything else, but we all have one underlying principle that Israel has a right to exist, and Israel is the homeland for Jewish people. Number one.
okay,
If we can agree with that, then if you want to say, I hate Bibi, good for you. Hate Bibi.
right,
I like Bibi. You hate Bibi. I like the other guy. You hate the other guy. That's nothing. But if someone comes home and says that Israel doesn't have a right to exist, why does the United States have a right to exist?
right,
Then no one has a right to
right,
exist. If Israel has no right to exist, it was established by the United Nations on a vote. It wasn't someone came and took the land. The United Nations voted for a partition that created both Israel and Jordan.
right,
And that's it. And Israel has a right to exist like every other country. If Israel has no right to exist, and Jordan has no right to exist, Syria has no right to exist, Lebanon. Now,
right,
if you're willing to go that way, that
right,
there's no boundaries all over the world, okay, fine.
Right.
I'm okay. I'm fine. There's no boundaries. There's nothing. You're an idiot
yeah,
because you're an idiot, but at least you're consistent.
yeah,
Right.
But if you're an anti-Semite that comes and says only Israel's the only country in the United Nations that has no right to exist or that's committing genocide, then you're a hypocrite.
Yeah.
right,
Then you're a useful idiot. And that's what I would say to my kid.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I wouldn't hold back any. I wouldn't hold back any punches.
right,
I said you are only listening to one side. You're supposed to be a smart person going to university. In a university, there's a thing called critical thinking,
right,
meaning that you hear something and then you object to it, no matter what it is. Whether it's God exists, you have an objection. Think about it.
Mhm.
Present your case. You listen to a soundbite on TikTok by some idiot, by some pig vomit, and then you think that this is Tyrus Lokshin. And you think that this is. I'm hoping that my kids would not be so ignorant or so naive to buy this. But that's what the Jewish kids are buying.
Yep.
right,
They're not buying a lecture by somebody. They're buying literally
Nonsense.
sound bites. The word colonizer. I would say, what is a colonizer?
right,
Explain to me what a colonizer is. And after you explain to me what a colonizer is, pick up your fat ass and get out of America because we are colonizers. Okay? So go live somewhere where no one else lived before, some island somewhere, who knows where, off Mexico, okay, where no one has colonized, and you could live there. Because if we're colonizers in Israel, so are the United States of America.
even more so,
More
yeah.
so than anybody else. Okay? So get your fat tuchus out of my house. Okay? And stop
We should make a video of this so that we can
stop
and
eating
sell
my
it.
haraises
Yes.
and matzah. Okay?
Yes.
But that's the problem. The problem is that we are the most ignorant generation of
illiterate.
of
I know.
illiterate.
For sure.
We know nothing about who we are.
Yeah.
Forget about Israel. We know nothing about an American. We know nothing about American Jews.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Where we come from, who we come from,
Right.
what is our story, how did we get here,
It's
Right.
why we are here.
It's funny because I think when this comes out, we'll have already released the episode with Sal Litvak, the accidental Talmudist, and I think at the end of that episode, we started talking about the problems with Jewish education in America. And one of the things I was thinking was I just read A Letter in the Scroll by Rabbi Sachs, and it made me think of something where, for growing up how I grew up in a Reform Jewish community, our Hebrew school was Tuesdays, Thursdays, we went and did language, and Sundays we went and we did Bible, like Sunday school, right? We did, learn the stories and learn songs or whatever. But the thing that we don't teach Jewish kids is about why they should be proud to be Jewish. And if in all the good things that you like about Western society, almost all of them come from the Jewish faith. And we don't teach kids that. It's just sort of the mechanics, right? It's the language, the story, the sort of like it's the operational stuff of being a Jew, but it's not like the soul of why is being a Jew an honor. And
I
think
why it's an honor.
And I think it's something that I think we need to figure out quickly.
It's true.
That's been an old problem.
It's true.
For generations, how to instill in our children a sense of Goin Yankov, a pride of Jacob, and what it means, to be Jewish, and why when you walk out into the street, you're not swayed by every little wind that blows.
Yeah,
and that's what's happening now. I mean, we were getting the backlash of Israel's retaliation for October 7th. And it looks, look what we're doing, and that's because of ignorance. Simply because of the ignorance. The more you know about the situation, the more you begin to realize that, hey, you know what? This is a complicated story, much more than we think that it is.
Yeah,
it's just not so easy as a soundbite.
One of the guys who was on on one of the panels yesterday is he's at Biola University, which is a Christian, very Christian school. He's the head of security, and he's part of like the federal government's task force on university safety, like very high up in like university safety stuff. And he's West African, and he has a heavy accent, and he's really tall and very good looking man. And he's on the stage, and he was talking about so one of the moderator asked him, like, what did some schools get right, and why did they get it right and so many get it wrong after October 7th? And he said the Christian schools got it right because they have a foundation in the Bible. And when you understand the Bible and you understand history of the world and you understand God, it's so clear and so obvious what is happening. And he told this story. I thought it was only like touching moment of the whole day. He said, I grew up in West Africa. His father was an elder. He had 10 brothers. He said every single day they were woken up at 6 a.m. They spent 1 hour in what he called, I think, devotional.
Yes.
And then 1 hour farming. And then they went to school. And every single day for 1 hour, that devotional from 6 to 7, his father and 10 brothers read the Old Testament together. He said, so my whole life I knew the Jewish people, the land of Israel, God. He's like, no one had to tell me after October 7th who was what and what was what and where was what, right? And it was just such a powerful moment. Like, I don't know. We don't talk about that in the space of academia, like religion. It's like people are allergic to it. And here he was just openly saying kind of like the obvious thing, you know?
You know what also they don't have at Biola? Cancer.
They don't. Right. They don't have they don't have protests.
You don't have those cancer professors there.
Right.
Then they don't let them in.
Exactly.
It's funny that you said, as soon as you said he was from a Catholic university,
Protestant. What? Protestants.
Oh, Protestants. So some Christian university. I thought, oh, they're gonna get something right because they're gonna understand the situation better than most of the Jews will.
But I'm just curious what you think about this also. Like, Jews always throughout history, and it's something we talk about on my other podcast a lot, is like Jews always worshipped at the altar of higher ed. And I feel like we're at a moment where maybe some Jewish families are asking themselves, like, or even not even Jewish families, but as a Jewish community, like, what are we doing? Why are we sending our kids to schools like this, even in regular public schools, K through 12? I've never had an opportunity to really ask you this, but like, what do you think about what a secular Jewish family should consider when they're, deciding where to send their kids to school or how to educate their kids?
It's a matter of values.
Right.
And it starts with the parents. And what kind of values? So if you grew up your entire life listening to this value of equality, that we are all equal, there's no separation between anybody. We just happen to be Jewish by birth, but it doesn't mean really much. And we don't really do much at home. We're pretty much a secular family, but we're Jewish. I mean, we won't deny that we're Jewish, and we go to temple, twice a year, and we do that. And now it's time to go to school. Of course, I'm going to pick a school that follows my values.
Right.
So a Jewish day school probably is not in my realm.
Right.
I mean, because it's just too much for our family. I mean, it's all about religion and all that. So you end up in public school. Now you end up in public school. Until now, we were safe and sound. But now that the haters are coming out, these people are having a big problem. Mm-hmm. Universities already for the past 60 years, I would say since the 60s, have been trending this way. You know, it's been trending first left, first liberal, and then left, then extreme left, and more extreme left, and more extremist, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So when it was in the 70s and the 80s, and you know, it wasn't as blatant the anti-Semitism on campus as it is now. So what? Who cares? I mean, if their values were the same as most American Jews.
Right.
I mean, they were liberal. They voted Democrat. I mean, they wanted all of these things that were going on in universities. Now it's a little shocker to them. Right. You know, what's going on? We invested so much time, so much effort, so much cachet, you know, into this. We trusted you. We believed in you. We strove to strengthen this, you know, this organization. So now it's come back to bite you because we weren't paying attention. Right. You know, we just left our kids to be raised by nannies or television or movies or professors.
Right.
And now we turn around and we find out, oh my goodness gracious, look what they're saying on campus. Woe me, woe me. Oh, look, they're not so nice to my kid. My kid is unsafe. You know. At YU, they don't have this problem.
That's true.
At Biola, they don't have this problem.
Right.
You know, and maybe even Mississippi State. I don't know. I've never been there, but I'm assuming Mississippi State doesn't have this problem. Who has this problem? Harvard, Columbia, UCLA, University of Washington, all those ones that we supported big time.
Oh my God.
Millions and billions of dollars of Jewish money. And now it's, oh, look at them. They're not nice to us. And half of them are Jewish. So, you know, so you know, you're saying two things is wrong. Number one, it's anti-Semitic, and anti-Semitism is coming from the Jews themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's an issue. It's an issue that has come home. You know, but even with all of that said, I still think that there are institutions that still can't grapple or put your head around the idea that there's going to come a time when we need to make a separation.
Right.
Like, you know, I think in Orthodoxy, most of it's pretty, I wouldn't say universal. I wouldn't say universal. I'm sure there's Orthodox people, you know, also on whatever, you know, but mostly in the more progressive streams of Judaism, still struggling in a shul where people are protesting for Palestinians. Should we allow them in?
Right.
Should allow them in?
Right.
Should allow them in? I mean, this is a question that you're grappling with because we're all inclusive. Right. You know, we want it to be open for everybody. Well, if you're going to open it for everybody, even pigs get in. If you're open to everybody. Mm-hmm. So we still, even with the shock of October 7th, we still haven't really gotten out of this idea that somehow we're going to be loved if we only be nicer and a little bit more understanding and be a little bit more, you know, empathetic to everybody's views. They'll come around. They're not.
Right. It's interesting, and I'll let Jay speak after, but it's one of the issues that many Hillels are. I know two in particular right now that are dealing with this one particular specific issue, that students showed up to Shabbat dinners with keffiyehs and what to do about it. In one case, the staff told the Jewish students who were complaining about it and saying, we don't want these students here, to turn around and just ignore them and don't look at them. Okay. In the other school, they engaged with the students who came in with the keffiyehs, and they said, you know, blah, 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 it's probably not a good idea to wear that here. I don't have a problem saying that you can't wear that in here.
If someone
I have no problem with that.
To Hillel with a swastika.
Right. That's what I said. Exactly.
If someone walks in with a Nazi uniform, we're going to say, well, there were probably some good Nazis. Not all of them. Hitler made the trains run on time.
Right.
And there were probably some, are you saying of all the millions of Nazi soldiers?
Not everyone was bad.
Every guy put a Jew in an oven? No.
Right.
There were maybe 4 or 5 that didn't put a Jew in an oven.
Right.
And they, so you would engage with them. I would engage with them.
Yeah.
I would sit down with them and I would say, look, you're coming to a sacred space.
Right.
This is a sacred space. You would not walk into a Catholic church like that.
Right.
Okay? You would not walk into a Catholic church like that because you would show respect for the Catholic Church. You would take off your keffiyeh and I would take off my hat and we would sit like nice boys and girls there. Mm-hmm. You have come and you have now insulted and you have desecrated a sacred space, which is called Hillel.
Right.
If you feel comfortable like that, shame on you.
Right.
Shame on you. And because it's shame on you, I cannot sit here and make my other students feel uncomfortable. So you have a choice. You can wear the keffiyeh and go to Starbucks.
Right.
That's all.
Right.
I have no
go
problem.
Somewhere else.
You have a keffiyeh, but you are invading a very, very sacred space, like the temple in Jerusalem, where you had to take off your shoes to come in.
Right.
I don't like to take off my shoes. My feet are cold. Screw you. I don't know. So don't come here. I don't care. If your feet are cold, so go somewhere else.
Do you think that's what the high priest would say?
I'm sure he said that. He said it's actually recorded in the Talmud. The guy recording the Talmud, the high priest told the Sadducee, screw off. Okay, screw off the Temple Mount or we're going to screw you into the wall. But that's what I would say to them.
Yeah, you're right.
This is a very sacred space, and you would not do this to a Protestant place, or Mormon place, or any other,
or a
place.
Muslim place.
Or a Muslim
you wouldn't
place.
do it to a Muslim.
Here's where I think Hillel's challenge is. Hillel needs to decide, what does Hillel want to be?
Right.
Right. I think before you can figure out anything else, you need to have what is the guiding principle of the organization. And once you have that defined, then you can start making decisions about what are the principles of the organization. But
That's
if
true.
it's something where it's like, we want to be a place for Jews to learn about being Jewish and also be open to all Jews, and also then you all of a sudden now you have competing goals.
Right.
And
it's true.
And you've got to figure out what are your principles. And unless you have those defined, you're never going to have answers to these questions. And it's just
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Oh my God, your phone. You can't turn it off for the podcast.
So I'll just make a comment about real quickly about this while you're nagging your dad about his phone. And this is no different than in corporate America. And I've written 100 business plans, and the one thing I've seen in my career that guarantees failure 100% of the time is when you have competing goals and you don't have a prioritization of goals. Because in every project and every initiative, there's going to come a time when your goals are going to conflict with one another. And you need to know what is the prioritization? What is the totem pole of our goals? And that way it becomes very easy when things conflict. Then it becomes very simple, because this thing over here we decided is the top priority, and so everything else is subservient to that. And that's it's true in corporate America, and it'll be true in every nonprofit and everywhere else.
Yep. It's true, and for the Jewish people,
100%.
I want to ask you something, because you're the only one of the three of us that went to secular college and kind of was educated in secular schools,
or educated,
but I know
that's really educated here.
And I know it was like in the 1800s, so it was a long time ago.
Yes.
But did you ever feel in your time, whether it was in high school or college, that your Judaism was, you had to confront something difficult about being a Jew or anything like in that nature? Did it ever happen?
Honestly, not really.
Really?
No. I mean, you have to think about, I grew up in the suburbs of Boston, where there's a massive, like in group of Newton, there's a massive Jewish population. I basically spent all of 7th and 8th grade every weekend at bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, just like all my friends did. And then I went to college in a liberal arts college in Northeast, and it's kind of the same thing. Now, I think things have become much more intense on this topic since I've left college. But while I was there, no, I mean, really, I truly never had to deal with it.
It's crazy how much it's changed in just a generation.
Yeah.
It started about 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah,
this has been festering for about 15 or 20 years already.
Yeah.
It flared up, then it calmed down, flared up, calmed down. What October 7th just did was exploded it. It exploded it. And they're organized.
And I think the other thing is that when I was in college, there wasn't this like activism on college. Like I went to college in the late 90s when Bill Clinton was president. It was, I mean, you think about that period post the fall of the Berlin Wall to 9/11. And like in that period was probably the single greatest period in Western civilization history.
Yeah.
And so, like what were we complaining about? Like there wasn't, I honestly don't even remember there being like activists on campus. I mean, there's just, it just wasn't,
it's true.
It wasn't. So aside from the Jewish thing, the colleges just weren't nearly as politically active in this way. Right. They've always been liberal, but as far as like people marching with signs, protesting, whatever, Jews or PETA or whatever. It just, I didn't experience that.
I have a question. I have a question for you, for you. In the 80s, there was a big movement of protest to free the Russian Jews, the refuseniks who were stuck in Russia and couldn't leave.
Correct.
And it was led by lots of different organizations, and the modern Orthodox world was huge in it, and the federations. But for some reason, the Rebbe was not very into the protests and the march, and he was against it, right? So could you, because it's an interesting thing, because the Rebbe cared very deeply about the Russian Jews. Why did he object to the marches?
First of all, the Rebbe understood the Russians far better than anybody that was protesting.
That's true.
The Rebbe came from Russia.
He came from there,
His father-in-law was in prison in Russia.
His father.
He understood the Russian mentality. He understood what it means to confront the Russians.
Right.
He understood how to get things done. He had a vast network of people in Russia working, quietly, distributing, sitters and tefillin and all of this.
Right.
It was going along. The Rebbe always argued that the Russians do not relate well to being punched in the nose. And that's what a demonstration is. It's humiliating them.
Right.
And they are not a people that take kindly to humiliation. Quiet diplomacy works much better with them. And the Rebbe clearly said at one Farbrengen that there was already a movement to release about 100 to 200 families. They're already they were ready to grant their visas. They called it demonstrations. The visas were revoked because this is the way the Russians worked. So his idea was quiet diplomacy, slowly with little pressure, like the Jackson-Vanik Amendment. That we'll stop trade until this.
Right.
Those little pressures works. A massive demonstration to humiliate the Russians or to firebomb Aeroflot or whatever it was is totally the Rebbe was against. And because he knew them,
right?
Because he knew who the Russians were. He knew how to
speak their language,
how you deal with them. And quiet diplomacy, little bit of pressure, will get a lot more done than that. But they didn't listen to him. And I once confronted Meir Kahane on this because he was one of the leaders of the nations. But he says, "Well, the Rebbe had his position. I had my position. Okay, fine."
You met Meir Kahane?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How am I finding this out right now on this podcast?
He came to debate Alan Dershowitz in Boston. was about 1984.
Really?
So so I went to the debate, and then he just screamed Dershowitz because he was a bully. Dershowitz came in with all of the Dershowitz is not the Dershowitz of today.
Yeah.
Dershowitz then was a liberal, and he was
right.
And he was defending liberal positions. Kahane was a bully.
Right.
And he just bullied him. I mean, and he said, "You don't know what you're talking about because you don't live in Israel. Your children don't serve in the IDF, and I do, and they do." And okay, but afterwards there was a moment when you can
meet with them.
So I said to him, "What about you were big? It was going on now. It was in the 80s.
Right.
It was going on about the demonstrations. The Rebbe doesn't like demonstrations, but he didn't care.
Right. Did he have any interactions with the Rebbe?
I think he did.
Yeah.
I think he did. There was letters, but
you should probably just mention really quickly who Meir Kahane was.
Yeah.
Meir Kahane was the leader of the Jewish Defense, the Jewish Defense League. It started out as a very, very strong advocacy group for physically defending Jews.
Right.
Meaning that in the 70s, Jews were being beaten up all over New York City. He started this organization called the Jewish Defense League. If there was trouble in a certain neighborhood, you came and they defended you. Literally, they came to fight for you.
Right.
Physically fight for you. So they were a militant group to start off with, which was very different than any other Jewish group that was out there, like certainly Chabad, who was handing out matzahs and tefillin and everything else. And these guys came with nunchucks and knives, and hand grenades.
Right.
And they advocated for self-defense, and they advocated for every Jew at 22, all of that stuff. But later turned into politics. When he turned to Israel politics, he became a very, very, very right winger that advocated for the expulsion of all Arabs within Israel.
Right.
Get rid of them, because if you don't get rid of them, they're going to become a problem. He was labeled a terrorist.
Right.
He ran for Knesset. He won a seat in the Knesset, but then his party Kach was outlawed, and eventually he was killed in 1991. He was murdered by an Arab terrorist in New York. And subsequently, his son took over, and his son was murdered.
Oh, really?
Benjamin Kahane.
I didn't know that.
Was murdered. Yes, was
wow.
also murdered. And so he always represented the fist that, what, Jews have nothing to be apologetic for, and we need, because there's no such thing as a good guy. I mean, he would say, look at Gaza today. If he was in Gaza today, he said, look, every Gazan is a terrorist. And as long as you let them live among us, this will happen over and over and over again. That was.
But he's very controversial, right?
Very controversial.
Right. People hate him
because he was sort of like a racist.
Right.
Israel is only for Jews.
Right.
Not nobody else. I don't care. Get out. You could. If you want to stay, you're going to understand that you're a second-class citizen.
Right.
You could live in Israel, but you're not going to vote, and you're not going to have any privileges. So that was already Israelis. That was
the funny thing you mentioned is that, not funny, but I think an important point is a lot of people who want to, who want to talk about how Jews are these elitists will talk about Meir Kahane, but they'll never talk about the fact that his party was outlawed in Israel. Right. So, which is actually a much more compelling point that, every group of people have people like the Meir Kahanes, right?
Right.
But
extremists.
But there's not societies that will outlaw those political parties and those views just because they're outside of the realm of decency. And so that's a much more compelling argument for
it's true.
How forthright Israel is versus the fact that Meir Kahane existed, because they exist in every society.
Okay, but he was for power.
Mm-hmm.
You can the only way to exist in this world is through power.
Right.
There's nothing else matters, and they'll only respect you when they fear you. If they don't fear you, they will never respect you. This is the Middle East. That's what he argued in the Middle East. That the only thing they understand is power, and if you don't crush them, they'll just take advantage. If and a lot of people, was it interesting, after October 7th, his name resurfaced.
I know.
His name resurfaced,
it's
saying, you see, look, we all laughed at Kahane, but look
there's
happened.
a big controversy within the ranks of pro-Israel influencers over him now, because some of the big influencers on social media who are big Zionists and, they've brought him up and they're like, he was right, and they'll share some of his content and they'll share his books. And then there's a faction of very Zionist, pro-Israel, kind of more liberal leaning, who are like, let's not go down that road and be that kind of extreme, right? Let's be moderate and let's, try to find a solution to this problem that makes sense for both the Arabs and the Jews. And I don't know.
I mean, if you just look at Israeli society and you look how well integrated some of these minority groups are, like the Druze,
right. And it could be if they.
I would go one step further. If you would say today to the Arab citizens living in Israel who are Israelis, we are going to have now, we've come to the conclusion that this doesn't work. If this experiment of living together doesn't work, we are going to have now an exchange of population. All the settlers that are living now in the West Bank are being moved across the Green Line.
Right.
Means the army is literally going to pick up every yishuv, every settlement, every whatever it is, and in exchange, all of the Arab population within Israel is moving to the West Bank to live in a Palestinian state. You know what they would say to you?
No.
Why? Are you nuts? What are you crazy? What are you crazy or something? Who wants to live with them?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm Israeli. I'm Israeli.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
Someone said this to me. I went to this organization,
and the settlers wouldn't agree either.
Right.
The
they want to stay where they are.
They want to stay where they are.
But it's
what
just.
I'm just saying is, it's ludicrous to say. I mean, we know colonizers, or apartheid, and all of this. Apartheid.
Well, I heard a speaker who runs an organization called Roots. They're in the West Bank. It's incredible. I've visited them a few times, and it's an Orthodox settler. He's a crazy guy with a huge yarmulke and long payas, and he wears sandals. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That type of settler, and a Palestinian. They started this organization together. The Palestinian family has been in that area in West Bank for generations and generations, and they try to talk about the future of a place like the West Bank and what it could look like. And what the Orthodox guy said to me was, he said, we always say the land of Israel belongs to the Jews. He said, what if we flipped it and we said the Jewish people belong to the land of Israel? He said, when we flip it and say it like that, then other people can also belong to the land. It's not just the Jewish people. And he's like, he's like, I know that's a very hard statement for us to make. He said, but it's not wrong. And I struggled with it. I mean, I still I don't know how I feel about that, but it does make it a more, it complicates the issue more, because that guy who we met with, the Palestinian, he does believe that he belongs to that land. I
have no problem. I mean, I got no problem with having other people live in the land. I mean,
right.
It's not a problem. There's two problems what happens with something like that. If we would say, let's say the Arabs in the West Bank would all of a sudden have this incredible spirit of reflection come over them and say, what have we been doing? Why fight with these people for 75 years? We'll make peace with them. And okay, now, what would happen if they extended and said, listen, you know what? Forget about two-state solution. Let's all live together in harmony, this binational kind of country, and Israel would lose its Jewish majority. I'd have a problem with that.
Right.
I don't. First of all, I don't trust them.
Right.
I don't trust them. After 80 years of fighting, I would just not trust them. So saying that the Jewish people belong to the land of Israel and others can also belong to the land, it is true, but I need to be secure and certain that we have a Jewish majority, because there's only one Jewish country.
Right.
It's not like we have 14.
Right.
Okay, Israel goes binational. Fine, I'm going to move to Switzerland. I'll move somewhere else. There's no one else to move to.
Yeah. Right.
So Israel has to remain a Jewish country.
Yes.
Right.
It has to. By all stretch of imagination, we can't allow this to change. That's
one of the challenges. Like you look at what's happening, like with the Druze in southern Syria right now, and they're just begging Israel to annex the territory. And I mean, unfortunately, Israel has told HTS I at least I read this maybe a week or two ago that they will attack any soldier south of Damascus to protect the Druze population there, which I think is the moral decision.
Yeah,
but to your point, Rabbi, at some point you take in so many people that aren't Jewish, and is no longer a Jewish country. And so you have to balance that reality.
I think we've gone on quite a bit. I didn't even mean to get into politics in Israel. And we do want to do a few episodes on Israel and Zionism and sort of that perspective. But I want to end off kind of on this question, because I feel that as an Orthodox Jew, I was raised with this kind of understanding that anti-Semitism just exists in the world and will always exist. And it doesn't really matter to the degree that, like, as long as I can protect myself and my family, like, the non-Jews are always going to hate us, right? That's sort of the way I was raised to think about anti-Semitism, to be honest. Like, that's how we were raised. Sure. Non-Jews hate Jews, and there's nothing we could do about it. And no matter how much you try to be like them or beg them, it's never going to change. But I feel like a lot of other Jews who are not Orthodox did not get raised that way, right? And so this like new world that we're living in, which is it's so painful for so many people, sure. And so I don't know, how do you address that reality that people are sort of grappling with right now?
Today we were interviewing a new candidate for the top position here in Long Beach, and this question came up. Like, someone asked, "How would you solve anti-Semitism?" Not even a fair question. How do you ask someone that? How do you solve anti-Semitism? That's a question you ask somebody. I mean,
I asked our Australian guest how there's gravity in Australia. So don't.
Okay, so I do want to make a comment about that also.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's fine. A good question. So maybe she has a magic wand. She can swing it around 3 times, and all of a sudden anti-Semitism will disappear. This is the oldest hatred there is in the world. The oldest hatred is anti-Semitism. It's been around for thousands of years, and it's not disappearing because for so many different factors that it's still around. I mean, we know that if there were no Jews, you'd have to create Jews. You'd have to create someone to blame for something. Right. I mean, if you weren't going to blame Jews, so it would be somebody else. Irish was in the past. The blacks. Someone you'd have. So anti-Semitism is not going away. It's not going away. There's going to be a certain amount of people that are just bitter and angry and frustrated in their own state of life. Yeah. They've never made it. They're losers. And they don't want to blame themselves because it's too painful to blame yourself, because then you'd have to take responsibility. So it's much easier to blame somebody else. Now, who are you going to blame? So sitting on a train in Russia, the Russian turns to the Jew and says to him, "Every problem in Russia is because of the Jews." Right. That's it. You are the cause of all the problems in Russia. The Jew looks at him and says, "You're absolutely right. It's the Jews and the bicycle riders." So the Russian goes, "Why the bicycle riders?" So the Jew says, "Why the Jews?" I mean,
that's good. Yeah.
I mean, so this same anti-Semite is sitting there at home, scratching his beer belly, can't make his mortgage payment. His wife has long left him because he lost his teeth, and now he has to blame somebody for his state of life. So who's the easiest people to blame? Yeah. We're powerful in America. Yeah. We're small. We're this, we're that. So it's the Jews. It's the way Hitler described us, that we are Bolshevik capitalists. So we know we're both Bolsheviks, and at the same time we're capitalists. Right. We're communists, but we want to take over the world also through our capitalism. How do you fight that argument when you're a Bolshevik capitalist? Right. Okay. So are we Bolsheviks or are we capitalists? It's one of the two.
Or it's we're too separated from society, or we're too integrated and trying to pass as members of society. Yeah. It's always that.
So exactly. So why spend my time wasting on something that I have no power over, not going to be able to reflect? I mean, if I knew an anti-Semite, like if someone came to my house and said, "I hate you," I may engage with them. Like, why would you hate me? I mean, I'm a nice guy. I've never done anything to you. But this whole idea of anti-Semitism, fighting anti-Semitism. Now, it is true that We have to put up a good fight in schools to make sure that these curriculums, are literally, like going from bad to worse. We need to correct them, and I'm all for that for these people who are advocating, in public schools. But still, the antisemitism is not going away.
Right.
It's just not going away. And the more that we try to fool ourselves by saying that, if only would be like you mentioned, only if we'd be nicer people, if we would talk softly, if we would, dress nicely, if we wouldn't have a beard, or if you didn't wear tzitzis outside, all that. It's nonsense. It's foolishness. They don't care.
Right.
I mean, whether you wear tzitzis or you don't wear tzitzis. I mean, what, they like Reform Jews better than Orthodox Jews?
Why? That's so true.
They don't like any Jews.
Yeah.
They don't like any Jews. So why spend the time doing this? I mean, if we can put resources like we started in the beginning of this talk about telling your children why we are proud to be Jews, like Jay had said.
Right.
Why we are proud to be Jews.
Right.
What makes it special. Why you should be happy and dancing for joy. How lucky and how fortunate is our lot that we ended up being a Jewish person.
Yeah.
It's
correct.
It's I hate to be doomsday about it, but the reality is there's no fighting anti-Semitism.
Right.
I mean, when you look at like like when we talk, I'm sure when we get to the point of talking about Zionism in Israel, and we start reading like Leon Pinsker, auto emancipation, or you like learn about Herzl. I mean, Pinsker said there's no hope. Like we are never going to be accepted. So get over it. And like, let's make our own space. And, it took Herzl a while to come around to that, but eventually he saw that it was inevitable. And so, you can do the best you can, but I think that this has popped up too frequently in too many places in too many different ways to think this is something that can be eradicated. Right. And I think we have to say, thank God there's Israel, and
when we do our episodes on Israel, we should focus on the positive, not on the politics of Israel. We need to talk about the history of Tel Aviv, how the Zionists came, and, and they took a swampland, and just talk about the positive things that we did in Israel, and how Israel was 150 years ago. It was a wasteland. And now look, it's a thriving country. But just stick to the positive aspects. Forget about the politics. Forget about its wars.
Right.
That we cover over and over and over again. But we should just focus on
the ingathering of Jews from all over the world to make a country.
You go to Jerusalem. You go to the shuk on a Friday afternoon, and thousands of Jews are shopping and screaming and yelling and bargaining, and everybody is happy, and then we're eating this and cracking these sunflower seeds on the floor, and it's a dynamic society. Besides, we think of Israel as like a war zone. It's not. I mean, people living inside of Israel are living. They're thriving. They're excited. They're happy. As a matter of fact, last week, the Happy Index came out. So number one for the 8th year in a row, Finland. Why the hell are the Finnish happy? It's freezing there.
Why?
I mean, most of the time.
Have you seen them? They're all good looking. They walk around looking at each other, being impressed.
I have some bad news for you.
What?
There was just an article written by Yasha Monk. And he said the Happiness Index is total trash.
It doesn't matter. People believe it. People believe it.
Exactly.
The eighth happiest are in Israel. And the 22nd is the United States of America.
That's so funny.
Because we're just not happy people. Why? Why should we be happy?
It is.
Why should we happy? We live in the greatest country in the world. Why should we be happy?
But it is. It is. When I've had this conversation with people about, they'll say that how Israel stole the land. And I love asking them, what part was stolen? Was it the desert or the malaria-ridden swampland? Like what?
I know.
Who is living in these places where you're either going to die from dehydration or die from malaria? Like what these really valuable pieces of real estate that Israel took. I mean, it's like,
why couldn't Hashem? I mean, I know this is a dumb question, but like, why couldn't Hashem give us Australia? Like far away from everyone else.
Why didn't you ask
and we could have just been.
He wanted Uganda.
I know.
He was willing to take Uganda.
Yeah, like we end up in the worst neighborhood.
Falls.
Yeah.
They offered him maybe put the Jews in Niagara Falls so they can just like go over.
We just end up in the worst neighborhood. Like we could have been.
We ended up in a tough neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, Australia, we could have a continent by ourselves, no one bothering us. I don't know.
I guess one of the things too. So I just because it's top of mind. So I just listened to the Ask a Jew episode with Josh Zepps, which is the first half is absolutely hilarious. I laughed out loud several times.
Thank you. Thank you.
But some of the things he said about Israel are so delusional.
I know.
I mean, just like sheer delusions.
Yeah. He doesn't know. He's an Australian media person who like, I don't know. He's like, what is he? A public thinker?
He's like,
he has a podcast. He's a radio guy.
He was.
So we had him on. He's Jewish.
He was a journalist.
A journalist, yeah.
And then he got
like Israel.
He has a complicated understanding of Israel, I think I would say. At one point, I mean, most of the people who listen to edJEWcation probably listen to Ask a Jew, but if not, there's one, and you for sure don't. But like after he says this whole thing about Israel, I'm like, well, we tried getting Sinwar's brother on, but instead we got Josh Zepps.
But a couple of things he said though, I was cracking up about how he was saying, I wish Israel would go back to the founding philosophy about like the kibbutz and being pacifists. Yeah, and I was like, pacifists?
Pacifists.
Who of the founding fathers was a pacifist? Well, yeah, Menachem Begin was a big pacifist.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what the hell are you talking about?
He doesn't know his facts because if you looked at all of the army units, the heads of all of the army units were kibbutzniks.
Right,
yeah. The whole Air Force were kibbutzniks. What are you talking about?
He didn't know.
I mean, it was, and
why does Australia go back to be a penal colony?
Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean, does it make sense to you?
Well, at least that actually was what happened.
Exactly.
I said we should rather talk about Mel Gibson with it.
Yes.
I was like, let's talk about Mel
Gibson.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Mel Gibson.
Yeah. A lovely person.
I'd like to get him on our podcast.
It would be fun to talk to Mel Gibson, actually. Well, this episode definitely went in a different direction than we had planned.
Yes.
But I'm glad we talked about it and hope people enjoyed listening. And if you have questions or comments, please write to us.
Yes.
We'd love to hear from you.
What's the email address?
Oh my God. edJEWcationpod@gmail.com. Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
As long as we get to keep our name for that long, for now, that's where you should email us.
Shall overcome. If we have to go to Washington.
This is a shout out, by the way, to our friends Brianna and Grant, who are helping us deal with a small technical issue.
Yes.
And I really appreciate their support and help. Brianna and Grant. Listen.
We'll have to do a shout out at the start of an episode. So they
correct.
Not an hour and 3 minutes in and we do the shout out. We'll give them a better.
Brianna deserves a half an episode at least. I could talk about her.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, good.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Until next time.
All right.
Have a good day.
Bye,
everyone.